Greetings. Well, that was time for another story. This time it's going to be a story about a hairy man in Bristol Bay. And after I tell the story, I think we'll have a little discussion about Bigfoot, hairy man, where I've gone, what I've seen, and what I think of it. So stay tuned. Here comes another story. I don't have too much credence about second, third, fourth hand sightings of Bigfoot or hairy man. Let's just face it, you know. Can you really believe the stories? I don't know. But when I talk to someone that I know well, work with, friends with, I know their education, I know their background, when they tell me they saw one, that gets my interest. I worked up in Bristol Bay about early 1990s, federal money. I was kind of a program director. I flew around 31 villages in an area the size of the state of Ohio. Most of the time I was flown in small little airplanes because there's no roads. And one of the guys that I worked with, let's just call him Steve. I don't know where he is now, and I don't want to give out too much information. Steve grew up at Clark's Point. Now, we were stationed in Dillingham, Bristol Bay Native Association. Outside the Muskegs River, the little community called Clark's Point. I believe there was a cannery at Clark's Point, but I'm not sure. Anyway, I'm not even sure how big the community was. All I know is you don't even know if Steve was born there or not. He was a Bristol Bay native. But he went to school there. Now everybody in Bristol Bay, come on, they know what a bear looks like. I mean, let's face it, a bear is a bear. When people see something that looks like a bear, they know it's a bear. Stevie used to walk down the road to school. He sat on the side hill. It was a little bit brushy and small trees and things, but there was a lot of berries. And the bears would be in the summertime in there feeding. You could see him, he says, on the side of the hill feeding there on the blueberries and huckleberries and whatever else they can find. He says one day he was walking there, he looked up, and he saw something. It wasn't a bear. He says it was bigger than a bear. It was about 8-10 feet tall, hairy, and had a human-like face. Scared the daylights out of him. He says he saw that thing up there and turned around. I guess he ran home, told everybody, and they told him, he says, you know, that's the hairy man. And I guess other people in the area had seen that hairy man. But it sure scared Stevie. He even gets a little scared when he tells the story. One of the other people I used to work with at Bristol Bay, this person had a PhD. He was the head of the Natural Resource Department. He knew about all the animals, all the land, all the things that were there in Bristol Bay. He was an expert. We're just going to call his name Doc. Well, Doc told me that one day he was flying, and like I used to do, you'd hire an old bush pilot. They fly you to a village or whatever. So he either flying from Dillingham to Manicodic, or from or went on to Togiak, which was the farthest north of our area. He says a nice sunny day, probably just like this. February, March maybe. A little bit of snow on the ground, he said. And they flew out of Dillingham Airport there, and just as you go over to Manicodic, there's a ridge that runs across there. A couple little high points in the ridge. But the plane has to go up, fly over the ridge, and when it does, because it is a short flight, You know, you're 100 feet off the ground or something, he said, you know, as you go over the top of the ridge on a nice day. You don't have to worry about hitting it or anything. Anyway, he says they were just starting to fly over the top of the ridge. He says, I looked outside of the plane, top of the ridge, and he says there was this creature. He says this thing was huge, 8-10 feet tall. It was standing there looking up at him, and he says, I was looking down at its face. And he says it was completely hair, standing on two legs, big long arms. He says it was covered all kinds of hair, but he says there wasn't a whole lot of hair around the opening of the face. And he says that thing was looking up, and I was looking down, and he says, I never believed in a hairy man before, but he says, I'm a believer now. So there's two direct cases that I had while I was up in Bristol Bay. Is there a hairy man up there? I don't know. I had done quite a bit of exploring while I was up in Bristol Bay. A lot of Alaska Native friends that took me hunting, brought me caribou. Actually went up Portage River. I shot my first and only moose up there in our moose camp we had. But it's amazing, a number of people up there claim that they knew people who had seen the hairy man up there. Now, you know, I only got 2 first-hand accounts, and that's all I got. Like I said, is there a hairy man up in that country? I don't know. Not too many people have flown into the Chiknik International Airport. Yes, this is the main building. I'd like to talk a little bit about Bigfoot, what I know. I used to have a place I built on some acreage outside Auburn, Washington. You know, we had coyotes. I mean, I'd hear coyotes all the time, you know. And I knew what a coyote sounded like, and I'd even get up sometimes at night, look out my bedroom window, and I'd have a coyote laying, you know, right under my bedroom window, sleeping or sitting or something. But at the time in the early 70s, I had a friend, and I had told you this in the previous video. He was very much involved in the first Bigfoot investigations. They actually went out at night, tried to record sound. They tried to pick up samples and that sort of thing. But one day he took me out. It was south of Puyallup. We went past Puyallup, went past Graham. We didn't quite get to Eatonville. We went out in the woods out there, and he said a lot of people have said there's some strange things going on. So we went out. This was at night. Now, like I said, I've heard a lot of coyotes in my time. But I heard something I had never heard before and haven't heard since. And it made the hair stand up back of your neck. I don't know what it was. Also, we picked up some hair samples and stuff off the barbed wire fences and things. And they would send it into the anthropology guy there at the what do you call it? Washington State there in Pullman at the university. Now this was the very first guy that was studying Bigfoot, not the one that's on TV now all the time, but his predecessor, and it would come back unknown mammal. Didn't know what it was. And they'd find feces and different things. But still nothing positive there, is there? In my previous video, I had one there about Ape Canyon and Mount St. Helens. I also spent an awful lot of time around Mount Adams. Got a plane flying over now. But I climbed to the summit of Mount Adams and hiked around it, around different places. At the very interesting place with a lot of lava formations. Some of it looks pretty fresh. But did I find anything? Tracks? Sights? No, I didn't see anything. And I also spent an awful lot of time in Mount Rainier National Park. Now I climbed Mount Rainier twice. And I've been on almost every trail inside the park over the years. And I also spent a lot of time going cross country. I would even come in from the logging roads on the outside of the park and hike into the park, into lakes and different places. And so we got into some places where not very many people ever went. Now, I never saw anything. I never heard anything. Nothing that even resembled it could be Bigfoot. But I spent an awful lot of time there. I also spent a lot of time in the Central Cascades. There was one time I was hiking around a small little lake. It was kind of muddy. And in the water, you can see where something had gone down into the water along the edge of the lake. And in the really shallow water, there was a big footprint. Now, I don't know what it was. It looked human. It definitely wasn't a bear. Now, it could have been a person that stepped in there and squished the mud out a long ways. I don't know. I was in a place that very few people go. I have a size, I can't lift my leg anymore, but I got a size 11 foot here. And I put at the time I had Herman Survivor hiking boots, and they're pretty big. I put them inside that footprint. Was it Bigfoot? I don't know. One of the other areas I spent an awful lot of time in was the Olympic National Park. I used to spend an awful lot of time in the Olympic Mountains photographing mountain goats in the winter and in the summer. So I know pretty well most of the trails, but I just do a lot of cross-country area. I go into areas other people wouldn't go in. You know, some places like Mount Henderson and Mount Cruiser and Inner Constance and oh gosh, there's all kinds of places. Pack up between the Queets and the Quinault and so forth. And I'd spend quite a bit of time back up in those areas. Many times, probably more than average, I was alone. And I never camped where the designated camp areas were. Remember, this is in the 1960s and 70s. We didn't have all these permits and restrictions. So I always bivouac camps off the trail somewhere. Did I ever see anything or hear of anything strange? I don't think so. Out of all the years that I spent in that national park hiking around, I got charged by an elk one time on the ridge between the Queets and the Quinault up there above Lake Beauty. I had an ice axe at the time, and I raised it in the air and yelled at him and stopped his charge right in front of me. He was mad, like an old bull somewhere in a rodeo. You know. But I never saw anything in the Olympics either. I also spent a lot of time up in the North Cascades. I used to hike up around, I used to climb around on Mount Baker. I've camped as high as, it must be about 8,000 feet up, what they call the Lee Promontory, way above tree line. I was up there one time and about between the glaciers. At that time, that was about 74, 75, and the Mount Baker had shown some activity, and every once in a while you see a little puff of smoke coming out of the top, and if you look real close up towards the summit, the snow was yellow from sulfur. So it was kind of cool look. But I explored all that area. I never saw anything. Spent a lot of nights out there in the woods. Also went out towards the Chilliwack area, towards what do you call it, the Picket Range. Now at that time, the Chilliwack River ran from Washington State, from the around the picket range. It ran north into Canada, and at that time, people said that there were grizzly bear in that valley down there in the Chilliwack Valley. Now, whether they're still there, I don't know. I also spent time in the Goat Rocks Wilderness. I made a couple of trips down in there, climbed up over the top of Old Snowy towards Johnson Peak and explored some of the basins and stuff. Saw a lot of elk and stuff in there, but I never saw any sign of Bigfoot. No tracks, no scat. Didn't hear anything strange either. So I spent some time in Central Oregon, a couple of years. I explored the areas around the Three Sisters, Lava Fields, towards Crater Lake and a few of the other places. Never saw anything. Deer hunted down there with guys in the snow. Saw a lot of critter tracks. But people would say and joke about Bigfoot in the area, but I never talked to anybody that ever saw one, and I saw no tracks or any evidence of it. Yeah, another place I spent a lot of time. Used to go every year in the fall. There was a friend, and he lived in Idaho. And we used to take his four-wheeler. He'd drive me around. I don't walk very good anymore. I couldn't even drive one. But he'd drive me around, and we drove all over the Owyhees mountains there, and canyon lands, and Sawtooth Range, and the headwaters of the Salmon River, and all kinds of different places for, I don't know, every year for about 10 years straight. Never saw a thing. Looked like Bigfoot. I saw elk. I saw moose in Idaho. Lynx. I never saw any Bigfoot. I also spent some time in the Selkirk Mountains, north of Spokane, up around Abercrombie, Hook Nose, and Smack Out Ridges. Explored all the old mines up there. Had a guy I knew in the area there at Deep Lake. He took me back into the mining areas and so forth. We joke about Bigfoot. Every once in a while somebody in that area said they saw or heard something, but I didn't. Back then in the 60s and 70s in that area, I think on the other side towards, maybe more towards the Idaho border there, on the other side of Abercrombie, there were woodland caribou at that time in Washington State. Now, whether they're still there or not, I have no idea. I've also spent time up in British Columbia and Alberta. I went up there and I got some photographs of some big bull elk, you know. I also photographed great big curled big mountain sheep, bighorn sheep. Great big curls on some of them, real healthy looking animals. And then I think it was in 73, 74, could be in 75, I'm not sure. We went with my dad and some other guys. We went moose hunting up in the Peace River country in northern Alberta. And it was maybe end of November, before Thanksgiving or something. Anyway, we were up on the Little Smoky River country up there, and it snowed every day, and I was running one of the very first Skidoo ski machines ever made. It was old and then, and I'd go out at night and run around, and amazing. I got back to camp, but every day we would have fresh snow on the ground. So you could see moose tracks all over the place. And wolf tracks, lots of wolf tracks around. Also, what do you call them? Remember, ptarmigan tracks, and lots of snowshoe rabbit tracks, and some lynx. Never saw any Bigfoot tracks. And I asked the guide who worked that area if he had ever seen or heard anything. And he hadn't either. He says, I hear stories, he said, of different people say different things, but he says it's usually second, third, fourth hand or whatever. I can hear him way up there working on the quarry today, getting rock out. Also worked and lived in Matsu Valley for a while outside of Wasilla. We had a nice little place there with sitting on an acre, and we had moose that were continually in our backyard. And they used to like to sleep at the end of our porch because the dryer vent went out. In the winter time, they'd be down out there by the dryer vent staying warm. Crazy. But anyway, spent some time there hiking, wandering around, did a lot of fishing. Also went up into Denali Park. Yeah. And when I was up there, there was some people along the road trail there that had spotted a great big bull elk. I mean a really big one. You know, when they're 70 inches you see once in a lifetime. I wanted to get a picture of it. So I went down over the hill, you know, all by myself, no gun. I couldn't have a gun anyway. So I got down in there and looked around, and somehow I lost something as big as a freight train in the woods. I don't know how I did. I don't know where that moose went. But anyway, stopped, got out on a little flat spot, looked around. There's a wolf. And, oh, there's a wolf over there. There's a wolf over there. Well, there's three, maybe four of them right all around me, you know. And so I got some pictures of some wolves that were kind of cool. Did I ever see any hairy man or Bigfoot tracks? Sorry, never saw a thing. And here's something that's kind of got me baffled, is that, you know, I've been in the woods for over 60 years. Like I just demonstrated, I've been to a lot of different places. Now back then we didn't have the cameras they got now. And now you got trail cameras that are spectacular, take spectacular footage. You've got infrared, you've got drones. You have all this interesting equipment. And the population of the United States is almost doubled, so there's far more people out in the woods. So why aren't we getting more pictures and evidence of Bigfoot? This kind of confuses me a little bit. I know people say, well, we hear knocking against a tree. Well, you know, a woodpecker, sound travels a long ways uphill. And a woodpecker can make a lot of racket. And the other thing is that ravens. I've been in the woods up here, especially here in southeast Alaska, where I swear I hear somebody talking. Not ravens. Do you know that ravens can mimic the sound of a dog barking, a cat meowing? It's just amazing. They're amazing critters. So that, you know, sometimes people hear things. Sometimes people say they saw things. I saw something not long ago across the river here 2 summers ago. Something really big, black, and tall next to a big tree. But Alaska brown bear, which we have, well, I live right over here, about 200 yards. In this area here, we have Alaska brown bear 12 months out of the year, every day of the year. I can guarantee you right now there's one less than a mile away. I mean, we're right in the middle out here. Now, we don't see them much during the day. We do it in certain times of the year when they're after fish and stuff. They're mostly night raiders. That's why we cannot leave our dogs outside at night, because it's going to get ate. So, was that thing I saw a Bigfoot? It was very big and tall. But these brown bear will back up to a big tree and sit there and rub on it and lean up against it. Was it Bigfoot? I don't know. You know, if you're in an area where you think there is a Bigfoot, I mean, for $50 you could buy a really nice trail cam. Everybody's got cell phones and all this wonderful listening equipment that's out there. All this neat technology. You got drones that go off, infrared. I mean, if you think there's one in the area, go check it out. I found this on my trail cam not too long ago. Now, what is it? Is it a bear? Well, it looks like it's pretty tall. That's a pretty good sized tree out there. Is it Bigfoot? I don't know. I know one thing. I wouldn't want to be out there in the woods the same time that this thing is around. Well, does that mean that Bigfoot, hairy man, skunk ape doesn't exist? I don't know. I can't answer that question. I guess I'm like Spock in Star Trek, insufficient data. So come on, people, get out there with your trail cams and get out there and look for them. Find me some definitive proof. At least bring some people that are direct eyewitnesses. Till then, catch you later.